There's one more preseason game left to go in the Dallas Cowboys' schedule before the 2024 NFL season. And tonight, we project the Cowboys' 53-man roster. We're going to skip the music. We're going to jump right into it. If you prefer the article version, the link is in the description. If you're watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast, if you're watching on Facebook, you can still check it out over at a2zsports.com/Dallas. Let's start right away with the quarterbacks. And here's the thing. Let me know in the comments what do you make of this projection as we go. If there's something you don't like, let me know in the comments. I'll be responding to every comment that I can later tonight. But it's a fun one, man. And title of the article was 2 wide receivers playing tug of war. We'll get to that in a bit. Before we do that, though, quarterbacks. We got to start with the QBs. And I've got the Cowboys carrying 3 of them. There might be an alternate path, and we might dive into this even further tomorrow night, but there might be a path where the Cowboys just carry Trey Lance and try to keep Cooper Rush in the practice squad as the emergency QB. We'll see if the Cowboys would like to explore that, but in the meantime, I think the Cowboys carry 3 QBs. This is what they did last year, essentially. Trey Lance is on the rise, though, and that kind of makes things interesting. If the Cowboys decide that he's worthy of being QB2, then do you feel that liberty to maybe try to save a spot and use it somewhere else while trying to keep Cooper Rush through the practice squad? But I've got the Cowboys keeping the 3 of them, though. That's just something that I believe will happen based on the way that they've done things before. Now let's get to an interesting one. Running back. I've got 4 of them. No surprise with Rico when sick at the top of the list. We are at a point where Hunter Lipke as a fullback should also not be a surprise. He's just been pretty involved in the Cowboys training camp preparation on offense. He's going to be the starting fullback, but he's also going to earn a role based on his work as a tight end. So I could even see the Cowboys going short at tight end if they believe Hunter Lipke can be that versatile for them. We've seen Hunter Lipke run deep routes in practice. I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas wants to lean more into the 21 personnel type offense looks because they've got these nasty blockers up front in Cooper Beebe and Tyler Guyton, who they might be interested in getting involved in this more complex running scheme, and I'm just speculating here. But could they see Hunter Lipke as some sort of hybrid fullback that can also be a pass catcher, which then would present so many problems for opposing defenses as well? Now, the real conversation here is who is the 4th back then? Is it Royce Freeman, Snoop Connor, Deuce Vaughn, Malik Davis? Who would it be? I think it's going to end up being Deuce Vaughn now. This has also been somewhat of a tug of war because in my last 2 projections, I had Royce Freeman in there. But I think Deuce had a very strong preseason game. And I know practices matter a whole lot. But I think Deuce is one of those guys that if he's going to earn this spot, it's going to be because of such preseason performances. I think the Cowboys want to give him another chance. And I think he's the one guy that brings them something different. So give me Vaughn. I think he's got a legit shot. Give me Vaughn as a 4th running back on the team. Wide receiver. This is where there's a very interesting tug of war going on. Now, I've got CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, Tolbert, and then Kevontae Turpin and Jalen Brooks as my 4 and 5, not necessarily in order. And then there's a 6th spot that I think can go to one of 2 guys at this point. I think right now it's a battle between 6th round draft pick Ryan Flournoy and Jalen Cropper. Now, the reason why I say this has been somewhat of a tug of war, it's because early in the offseason, I had Flournoy in there. It's a draft pick. We know the Cowboys like their picks, and I didn't think they would risk him in waivers or something like that. Now, the problem is that Jalen Cropper has been a pretty good player in camp and then early in the preseason. We saw the preseason opener. Flournoy drops multiple balls. He has a fumble. And in the meantime, Jalen Cropper looks better than him, even though his hands were also somewhat questionable in that game versus the Rams. Fast forward to preseason game number 2, and the roles changed a little bit. We saw Cropper drop a bad, it was a bad drop versus the Raiders. Later, he had a fumble on special teams. Meanwhile, Flournoy setting up the fade shot with Trey Lance into the end zone, which was a fantastic route. He's got the size. He's got the speed. So I think it's been a hot potato type game between these two. Right now, maybe some recency bias in here, I will admit it, but I think it's going to be Flournoy. We also heard Mike McCarthy talk about him after the game, and he did use the words, he's a heck of a football player, and he proves it every time that he's being given an opportunity. Those are strong words from Mike McCarthy, so give me Flournoy as a number 6 wide receiver. I think there's also a bigger chance you lose him on waivers as opposed to Jalen Cropper if you want to take a different route here. So those are my 6 wideouts. Noteworthy cuts, in addition to Cropper, would be Tyron Billy-Johnson, David Durden perhaps, but mostly Tyron Billy-Johnson, who was a winner early on in camp. I actually have the exact quote from McCarthy here on the screen. Said, I'll tell you what, just really the way that Flournoy has come in here, a small college player, but he's picked it up, very bright. The way he's come back through injuries is impressive. He's just a heck of a football player. He proves it every time he gets more opportunities. Strong words from McCarthy right there. Let's go to the tight ends now. And when you're carrying 4 backs and you're carrying 6 wideouts and 6 wideouts, it's difficult to keep 4 tight ends. And that's a risk that I'm willing to take here in predicting this. But I think that Brevin Spanford, as much as I want him to be a hit, doesn't seem like he is a lock for the roster at the UDFA that we were all so excited about because they paid him a very high amount of money. But with Liebke taking on some tight end duties, I could see the Cowboys being comfortable with this. Jake Ferguson, Luke Schoonmaker, and I think John Stephens Jr. is beginning to look like a lock. We know that the Cowboys would have gotten him on the 53 last year had it not been because he suffered a season-ending injury in the preseason. But he was supposed to be on that 53. I think the Cowboys make that right now. And John Stephens has had some moments as a run blocker as well. He's a receiver that can be flexible, right? We've seen him play out wide, and because of his size, it works. So John Stephens Jr., I see him on the team totally. Could see Brevin Spanford, though, fighting out a roster spot here. But there would have to be a tough cut somewhere else. Offensive line, I think they carry 9 of them, right? I think they might be tempted to carry 10, but with Chuma Edoga being projected for IR, in my opinion, they're going to place him on IR on cut down day. There's a new rule, by the way, that allows you to put 2 players on IR on cut down day and still have them be designated to return. So I think the NFL was trying to avoid this very common and yearly situation where teams were carrying dudes on the 53, then putting them on IR, and then re-signing other guys. I think the NFL is trying to limit that, and now you've got 2 spots that can be designated to return on cut down day, so not before. So, for example, Earl Bostic, who was placed officially on IR today, he's done. He's out for the season. That is it for Earl Bostic Jr. But anyways, as far as the roster projection goes, I've got the starting 5, Tyler Guyton, Tyler Smith, Cooper Beebe, Zach Martin, Terrence Steele. And my backups right now, I've got TJ Voss. I think he's too good as a guard. Azim Richards is also playing as a guard. Brock Hoffman, a quality centerpiece. And I think the Cowboys might be missing that swing tackle, but Josh Ball right now seems like the best option because Matt Waletzko is definitely not the best option. Dakota Shepley is an inside player. Nathan Thomas, we have not really seen him at all. So the 7th rounder, because of the injuries, he might have costed himself a chance at this job. So now, right now, I think it's going to be Josh Ball. And they might be comfortable waiting out Chuma Edoga unless an injury happens and they have to scramble for an answer. But that's how I view the offensive line right now, and I could see somebody being added to this list at tackle. Now let's go to the defense, though. I've got 5 edge rushers. That includes Micah Parsons. Some people will list them as a linebacker. I will keep him with my edge rushers. I've got 5 of them. Micah, Dila, obviously, Marshawn Nealand, 2nd-round draft pick, and projected defensive end 3/2 for the plays that Micah is at linebacker. But then he's gonna receive some competition from Carl Lawson, who was officially signed today, by the way. I think Nyland and Lawson are going to be the top rotating pieces there. But also, I've got Chauncey Golston making the team as the 5th edge rusher on the team. Noteworthy cut right here. And obviously, I've got Sam Williams going to IR. But I think the most notable cut that I've got here is Biliami Fehoko, something that I've mentioned on the shows. Back-to-back preseason games, he's had the second most pass rushing snaps in each of those games. And in each of those games, he walked away with 0 pressures. I hate it because I actually like Fehoko and I like that technician style that he brings to the table. But he's just not making it work right now. And I don't see, unless something very drastically different is happening on practice, I don't see how Fehoko Jr. makes the cut. I think that the lack of production is very underwhelming. And I think it was somewhat telling for him to be playing on the inside late last weekend when we heard from Mike Zimmer that he was kind of done with that experiment and that he was going to play both Fehoko Jr. and Golston on the edge a little bit more often. So I might be overthinking that one, but Fehoko Jr., I just don't think he's looked great. I think he's out of this squad. Now, defensive tackle, this is one that just makes me think this cannot be the room that the Cowboys start the season with. I think there's going to be a move. I think the Cowboys are missing a backup 3 technique. So much so that Jordan Phillips, a certified nose tackle, was playing 3 technique versus the Raiders because I think the Cowboys simply have a lack of bodies. It is that bad. There's not one guy that can or viably play 3 technique for the Cowboys in 2024. But I do have Ozo Digisuwa making the team, Massey Smith, Jordan Phillips, who they just traded for, and 7th-round rookie Justin Rogers. I could see one of these guys being out. I think Rogers could be the odd man out. I think they're going to keep Denzel Daxon on the practice squad as an international player, so he wouldn't count towards the 60-man player limit. But I just don't know who is the backup to Oza, and you got to have some degree of rotation in there, and I'm very worried about that part of it because I think we're still missing that element. If I had to bet on the Cowboys making one move, I think they would be adding yet another defensive tackle. Unless they're serious about using Jordan Phillips at 3 technique and they try to implement him there, we'll see. 5 linebackers for me, by the way. Who is the last one is anyone's guess, but I've got Eric Kendricks, the Damon Clark, the Marvin Overshown, Maris Leofau. That is my top 4. And obviously, the Leofau is on the rise. But then the 5th spot could go to anyone. I'm giving it to Buddy Johnson just because I think he's had the most solid performances so far in preseason. But there's so much that we don't know about this group. I know some people are fans of Nick Vigil. I think Willie Harvey has struggled a little bit, and I've heard that things might be different in practice, but the games that we've seen from him have not necessarily been a great first impression. So I've got Willie Harvey Jr. out, and I've got Buddy Johnson, 2nd-year player, in there. We'll see what ends up happening there, but that 5th spot appears to be a wide-open battle so far. Cornerback, this might be the first surprise to many people, but I've got 5 of them, and the top 4 is a lock right now. I think the top 4 is not changing. Starters, Trevon Diggs, Daron Bland, Jordan Lewis. 5th-round draft pick, Kellen Carson, who has been very impressive in practice so far. And then I've got Keemon Hall as the 5th corner on the squad. Now, this might be controversial because Hall kind of came out of nowhere, signed late in July. Nobody talked a whole lot about him. He seemed to be a camp body addition. And right now, I think he's going to make the team. You know what Mike McCarthy said today just before I started recording? He said, let me try to get you the exact quote because I tweeted it. You can follow me on Twitter, by the way, at MauNFL. Mike McCarthy said there's not too many days of practice where Keemon Hall doesn't make a highlight play. That's strong praise for him. 2 picks as well in the preseason. One of them went for a pick 6. I don't think Andrew Booth Jr., Josh Butler, Eric Scott Jr. have proven a whole lot. So I could see this one going to the surprise player, and that would be Hall. And he would be my 5th cornerback on this squad. It might be a little bit of an overreaction to the preseason, but I don't think anybody else has that spot secured. So give me Hall in this conversation. And then if it wasn't him, maybe I would go with Andrew Booth Jr., but don't get it twisted. He was not great versus the Raiders, even though he had so many tackles. Now, going to safety. This is a tough one, man. This is a tough one because I went with 5. And maybe if the Cowboys had another defensive tackle, I wouldn't have gone with 5. But Mike McDaniel said something very recently discussing the roster when he was like, you got to let the players dictate your 53-man roster and the structure of it. And you know what? This is the best group on the team, I think. From top to bottom, I think this is the best position group on the Cowboys. And I've got Malik Hooker and Donovan Wilson in there, who are your starters, and they are both paid, so they're not going anywhere. And then Marquise Bell, Juan J. Thomas, either of those two could be a starter somewhere else in the NFL. Absolutely. And Marquise Bell and Juan J. Thomas are both versatile, so we've seen them do a whole lot of stuff. They just have to be on your team. They're good ball players. That's what you want. But also, Julius Wood is entering the picture, the talented UDFA that is quickly gaining some fans. And he was so good versus the Raiders that I just had to include him one way or another. As I said, I think sometimes you got to let the players dictate the roster. And this is one of the best groups on the team, if not the best. In my opinion, it is. So I got to carry 5 safeties, even though the 3 safety looks are a thing of the past in Mike Zimmer's defense. And finally, last but not least, specialists. Not much to say. Brandon Aubrey, Brian Anger, Trent Sieg. And if you don't think CJ Goodwin is a roster lock, I urge you to reconsider, because that guy is on this team, and it's a fact that he is on this team. So that is my 53-man roster projection, man. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know what you didn't like, and let me know what you would change out of it, and I'll be reading your comments very soon. That is all for me tonight. Do me a favor, hit the like button for me, and I'll see you tomorrow night. Bye-bye.